The story of Daniel Carter. I heard this story from an old prisoner at New York State Prison, a man who spent many years of his life behind bars and whose memories smelled of cold stone walls. He said that for a long time, his cellmate was a man named Daniel Carter, a man from Manhattan, New York. According to him, Daniel Carter was once a normal man from the busy streets of Manhattan, but his fate led him to one of the quiet cells of the state prison. This account is that man's story, a story that began in the heart of New York and continued behind the high walls of the prison. Daniel worked at one of the companies. Life wasn't very good for him. He lost his father when he was 10 years old and lived with his grandmother. His mother passed away when he was born. He had no brothers, no sisters. It was just him and his grandmother. His grandmother always encouraged him to be a brave and strong man, and everyone was kind to him. His grandmother always said that strength belongs to men, and you must be very strong, both in body and in mind. They barely managed to get through life together. Grandmother was the best gift from God for Daniel. He didn't need a friend or anyone else. Grandmother had filled everyone's place for him. But life has its own rules. One night, after they watched a movie together and she fell asleep, without any sickness or pain, Grandmother didn't wake up in the morning. She left Daniel alone. Daniel never forgets that night. A feeling told him that maybe there wouldn't be a tomorrow. He cried a lot, even though he was 23 years old. It was hard for him. He decided to stay home alone for a few days to think, away from everyone. But suddenly, on the first day, when he woke up, I don't know if you will believe this or not, but a voice appeared in his mind that helped him think. How? Let me tell you. It was 8 in the morning. He was having breakfast when the doorbell rang. When he went to see who it was, he saw a woman and a girl. He greeted them and invited them inside. They were his neighbors. The mother of that girl, whose name was Elizabeth, said to him, "That's life. You must accept the truth and remember you are not alone. I am here for you too." Days passed slowly, and Daniel became close with that family, a closeness that gradually took on a warm and affectionate color. But among all of them, his heart was drawn more. For Daniel, Emily was not just an acquaintance. She was his kindred spirit, his confidant, and being with her made him feel good, like walking in the gentle sun of a spring afternoon. Without realizing it himself, he had fallen in love with her. In love with her calm smiles and her meaningful glances. Yet, every time he thought of her in his solitude, that same familiar voice whispered in his mind, "Stay away from that girl." A voice whose reason he didn't know, and even he found it hard to believe. It was as if his heart wanted to get closer, but something inside him pulled him back. And then a quiet and ruthless truth was revealed. Daniel understood that Emily's heart belonged to a man named Ryan, a love that had blossomed in her heart before him. Daniel couldn't imagine losing someone who had just entered his life and found meaning for him. This very fear of loss drove his mind into darkness. He made a decision from which there was no return. a dangerous and ruthless decision. On a rainy night, when he learned that Ryan was alone, he put his plan into action. With the unwitting help of Emily, who had told him Ryan was alone, he prepared everything. Silently, he went to the kitchen and turned on the gas, so its smell would spread in the darkness. Then he entered Ryan's room and called him in a calm and deceptive tone. He made an excuse, saying he wanted to surprise him. He asked him to come to the kitchen a little later, holding a candle. Before that, Daniel had turned off all the lights in the house. The house was plunged into silence and darkness. When Ryan entered the kitchen, Daniel left the house without being seen. In the darkness, Ryan entered the kitchen with a flickering candle. The small flame danced in his hand, casting shadows on the walls. He had only taken a few steps when suddenly a blinding light engulfed everything, and a deafening sound shattered the silence of the night. Daniel returned to his house, calm and seemingly unaware of any event. He tried to steady his breathing and convince himself that everything was over. The house was quiet, but its silence seemed heavier than ever. About 2 hours later, his phone rang. Emily's name appeared on the screen. As soon as he answered the call, her broken sobs echoed in his ear. In a trembling voice, she said, "Daniel, please get to the hospital quickly." Daniel put the phone down. A wave of emotions churned inside him. Excitement, fear, a dark hope. Strangely, that usual voice in his mind, the one that always warned him, was silent this time. Its silence was scarier than any scream. When he entered the hospital and learned the truth, the ground gave way beneath his feet. Ryan was not dead. He had survived. Turmoil struck him like a storm. His mind raced. If the police interrogate Ryan, if he has said something, everything would be exposed. Daniel was neither a professional killer nor a cold and calculating man. He was just a person who, out of fear of loss, had stepped onto a dark path. And now he was more afraid than ever, not of Ryan's death, but of his survival. Daniel thought to himself that there was no way out anymore. Fear ran behind him like a heavy shadow, but his love for Emily was greater than any fear. He took her out of the cold and lifeless atmosphere of the hospital and put her in his car. In the darkness inside the car, his voice was trembling but full of emotion. He told her how much he loved her. Not a simple love, but a love that flowed in his veins, and life had no meaning without her. He said he wanted to go somewhere far away with her, to build a new life. In a tone mixed with anxiety, he confessed that what happened to Ryan was the result of his own decisions, as if he wanted to accept the blame, but at the same time justify his love. He asked Emily to run away with him. His voice trembled between plea and excitement. Emily, who knew Daniel better than anyone, stared at him with a deep look. There was something in her eyes that Daniel couldn't read. Finally, she slowly said she agreed, but she needed to go to her house to get some money. Daniel was overjoyed. His heart was pounding so hard that everything seemed like a sweet dream. He took her home and considered that night as the last night of the past, a night he thought would be the beginning of their new life. The smile never left his lips. But only a few minutes had passed when the sound of sirens tore through the silence of the night. Blue and red lights flickered on the walls. Daniel, still dazed by the hope he held, didn't understand what had happened. He didn't know that Emily, before getting into the car, had called the police and told them everything. He didn't even try to escape. When the cold handcuffs were placed on his wrists, only then did his gaze fall on Emily's face, a look that this time was filled not with love, but with truth. And at that moment, he understood, but it was already too late. After several long sessions and reviewing the confessions and evidence, the court issued the final verdict: life imprisonment. Daniel would have to spend the rest of his life behind cold prison bars. When the judge read the verdict, Daniel just stared at some unknown point, as if the sound of the world had gone silent for him. He didn't protest, he didn't shed a tear. Only something inside him collapsed, the same thing that was once called hope. In prison, days were no different for him from nights. The gray walls of the cell held a silence heavier than any scream. Sometimes he whispered to himself that the voice that always warned him was his grandmother's voice, the woman who encouraged him to be brave and didn't want his future to be lost in darkness. Now he finally understood that those whispers were warnings, not hallucinations. But understanding doesn't always mean being able to fix things. Daniel gradually withdrew into himself. He didn't sleep well, nor did he have any desire for food. He would stare at the ceiling for hours, replaying memories in his mind like a repetitive movie. Emily's smile, the rainy night, the sound of the explosion, and the moment the handcuffs were placed on his hands. Life had stopped for him. His body was still alive, but his soul had collapsed long before. He didn't last more than 2 months. One cold morning, the guards found him motionless, quiet and calm, as if he had finally given up on the war raging inside him. And the bitter truth was this: loneliness is a silent wound, a wound that no human being, no matter how strong, can fight alone.
I hope you enjoyed the story. Please support us by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Sincerely, we are not alone.